Thank you. So there you go. Now you know we're all coordinates. Welcome to Go for Lunch. I do want to announce that the Kansas Humanities has given us a grant to help with staff funding to cover payroll and things like that. Doesn't cover the speakers, but it does cover us. And so that was kind of cool that during COVID, we didn't really have any help with our paying employees. So this month, we have a huge deficit for our budget into planning for issues with COVID. And basically the money they gave us to put that money back in to our budget. So we need to be telling them about what Kansas is. So they are bringing this to you along with Mildred and her daughter. They didn't charge us a dime to come, and we haven't given them a gift or anything at this point. And so they have, I'm going to give them they're not giving any monetary benefits. They're not selling books. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart to get the message out. And we'll tell you about that. Next month, we have Laura Schroyer coming from the college, and she's talking about 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. And I imagine that appreciation is ways that people like to be acknowledged with work in any organization or at home. So come listen to that. And then in December, we have Kimberly Funk coming, and she wrote the book, Christmas in the Stable. And it's a beautiful book, and she's going to come, and I'm hoping she'll read some to us, tell us about it. Don't forget, the Friends of the Pioneer Memorial Library is selling greenery. Talk to Jen or Alicia, and we will get orders for you. You can either send them to someone across the country, or you can have them delivered here and deliver them to your family here in Colby, or you can decorate your own table and your own thing. There's lots of different ways to have greenery. And Judy has now got the story walk up at the Extension Center. So there's a little blue truck, and so go and find the beginning of the book and read it, walk your dog, take your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, take your friends, have fun. Remember, we have 12 classes each Thursday night. If somebody needs to learn English, it's free from 6 until 8:30. Okay.
What kind of population do you have for that class?
About 7 people.
Huh.
Yeah, and they're very regular and working hard at learning English. So yeah, we have a Pioneer Memorial Library book club. Some of us from the book club read this, and then we were reading this month. Kaiser's Web. Oh, Kaiser's Web. Thank you. Joyce is in there. And then we have the science fiction book club. We have a poetry group, and some of you are part of the poetry group here, and some of us write poetry. And then we have story time for the little ones. You do not have to sign up, so if you have a visiting child, and we are having it that week, okay? 1,000 books before kindergarten. This is for children that have not entered kindergarten. They can sign up and you read them books, and then you record it, and you get incentives. And you can have that all together for them. It's a really cool program. And remember that if somebody wants to check out a bike, we can buy. Well, the Writers Club meets here, and we help them, and they have a writing contest recently. So that's good fun. And then remember, little ones and Sunflower E-Library are traveling, or if you just want to read books on your phone. And then also remember, we have note cards for gifts. In fact, I need to send note cards to our speakers today, because those were developed from the Friends. And remember that when the weather gets bad, the first place we put on our notice would be Facebook, and then the second place would be our category website. Okay? So, without further ado, I'm going to get started. And Mildred, Schindler, yeah, I forgot your last name, Janzen. I'm sorry. I moved it. I know. I've done it several times. So anyway, I'm going to do a trailer, and I'm going to do some pictures on the website, and I'm going to show you a map before we get started answering questions and talking. Okay? So bear with me for just a minute.
I wanted to tell my story so future generations of my family will know, and so history does not repeat itself.
So, this is Mildred's father, Chris. He's a farmer. This is his mother, a sheep farmer. It's Muti, but she called her mother Muti, so we talk about that, we know that. This is Mildred and Forrest. Forrest is her little brother. This is Mildred at high school. It's one of the I'm sorry. This is Mildred from high school. And she would have been in the United States about that time. Is that correct?
I was 22 years old when I graduated. I started when I was 18.
And this is Mildred at UK on the farm here in America. And this is her husband that she married, Leon Janzen. And she married him, and they're from Ellsworth, is that right?
Actually, Lorraine.
Lorraine, that's correct. And this is her brother and her and her friend, mother, that's it, yes, sorry, can't see that. And this is their family photo, and one of them is Karen. Raise your hand, Karen. I'm not saying this is you. Yeah, that's Karen. And then this is Mildred and Leon, another 65th wedding anniversary. Oh, okay.
That's wrong in the book.
Oh, that's wrong. And Leon has passed away, so she is by herself. But just so you know, and this is the person who helped Mildred write the book. Okay, this is Sherry, and she's a historian and a teacher and a writer, and her through different circumstances, if you read the book, we'll find out how she came to write the book. Okay. And this is Mildred's bedroom writing, or is that Sherry's? Sherry's. Okay. I wasn't sure. And then, of course, this is what happens when you start writing somebody's story and you go to bed. Probably have lots of sleepless nights. Yeah. And then Mildred right there. Oh.
That's when I read the book, each chapter 4 times.
Doesn't that inspire you to want to write more in your life history? All right. Okay. So one more thing I want to show you. This. Okay. So Berlin is here. And Mildred grew up at Braddock right here. And this whole section, this was all Germany, but it later became Poland. So her whole farm, and it was a large farm that her parents and her grandparents and great grandparents farmed. They had owned it for 300 years. And they produced what, rye, barley, and potatoes. Lots of potatoes, she'll tell you about that. Well, when the war was over and the Nazis were defeated, the Russians came in and Poland came in, and they made this all of Poland. So her whole family lost everything. That's part of the story. And just so you know, when we talked about her parents leaving, and she and her mother were leaving the farm and were told to leave. They were just told to leave. They must go. Pushed out. They had to go wherever. And at one point, her mother and her brother, they went to Berlin, met an aunt, and then they had to go up here, which this became part of the Soviet Union also, in the Baltic Sea. And so part of that is how she was allowed to come to Berlin as your aunt again, and then get to America. Because Mildred's parents, when her parents came to America, and her father came to farm, because there was such bad finances and everything in Germany, so he came to farm in the United States. And he met with a gentleman, and they started farming together. And then Mildred's grandmother died, just before Mildred died. Okay. So then Mildred's grandmother would have died, and the father would say to her father, Fritz, you must come home. And he said, well, why can't Uncle do it? And he said, because Uncle doesn't know how to farm. So Fritz went home with a good friend, introduced a good friend to one of Fritz's sisters. They ended up getting married, come back to the States. Fritz comes back to the States, and then he courts her grandmother from afar, and then her grandmother comes to the States. Her grandmother comes to the States, and they live here several years. And Mildred was born in the United States, so she has a United States passport. Or birth certificate. I keep saying passport, birth certificate. So when her parents are asked to go back to Germany, they take her with them. 6 months old. She was 6 months old. And so her parents take her back to Germany, not realizing that World War II is going to come. And that so much is going to happen. And so her parents, father and mother, then are farming the land with her, and then her brother. So that's how she gets to America. But before she gets to America, she has to go through a lot, and that's what part of this book is about. Okay, so that gets you started. So she goes from here to here, and part of this time was when the Russians and the Polish came in. We'll talk about it a little bit. And then she has to come back down to Berlin and get approved. But it's many years, several years. So we'll go on from there, okay? I'm gonna put some lights on. And yeah, let's do that. So we're going to ask Mildred some questions. You want to join me? Well, this is the high chair. That's right. Literally. So one of the things I want to talk about in the back of the book is chronology that Sherry Green did, and I read the chronology first, and that really helped. But also in the back of the book is biographies. There's biographies. There's notes. There's all kinds of information about the book. But I want to know, how did you get Sherry Green to come and help you write the book, and why?
First of all, turn me on. First of all, I want to thank you, Melanie, for having me, and your staff for having me come and answer some of these questions. I'm so happy to be here, and that the weather was good. We had a good drive, 2.5 hours or something like that here, so it was good to be here.
How did you come to get Sherry to help you write the book? And why did you write the book now?
About 4 years ago, I decided, I was 88, and I decided I better write this down for my grandchildren. I was the last person living from my family, so I thought I better write it down.
Okay, you didn't do anything, go ahead.
For my grandchildren. Am I, oh, I'm too loud. And my girls decided, well, maybe maybe we should have a book. And a cousin of ours, second cousin, my husband's cousin's child, so be a second cousin to Karen. She went to Europe for Austria for on a trip, Sounds of Music. And she met Sherry there, and they got to visiting, and Sherry was an author. And she said, you know, I have a cousin that you might be interested in writing about. So that's how and my girls, I said, I don't want to write a book. I don't want to write a book. I don't want this lady coming. She was Miss Mississippi many years ago, and she was a college history teacher, and I don't want her coming because she came. So on that side of the dining table, I sat on this side, and we had the nicest conversation. And she was there 2 days interviewing me. I said, you could be one of my girls. So I have another adopted daughter, my Sherry, because she's just like she's family.
And thank goodness, because it could have gone the other way.
Yes. Because I really didn't want to do this. But she was so kind, and that made me feel so at ease. She interviewed classmates. She interviewed friends. She went to the library. She went to the Historical Society, pieces together. She has woven a lot of history into this, but she was a history teacher. She was interested in my time over there, at the end of World War II, and that was my bad time when all this happened.
So your father and mother had both been in the United States. You were born there. And so now you're in Germany and Hitler is taking over. What was your father's response to the military and Hitler, to the SS and things like that? Tell us about that.
My dad, we knew he did not like Hitler, but you could not say anything. They put on a radio exactly what they wanted you to know, and we did not know much. We lived in the country in a little town, and we weren't around all these troops and everything. But we had an SS man living in our town, and one day he came to the farm. That was a year or two after, when I was about 10 or something. My folks were in the field, and he said, little girl, feed the chickens. Well, this was afternoon. You don't feed the chickens in the afternoon. We feed the chickens before they go to roost. So I thought that was strange. And why did he ask me to do this? Well, he wanted to count the chickens. You have to give so many eggs per chicken to the government. And so my mother had chickens locked up in a hog shed. And they also had a hog in a chicken coop, in a extra special, for extra meat to butcher. So that's how we had to do. But we never went hungry because we raised everything on a farm that we needed. But you did not say anything about the Hitler, nothing. You could not talk about it. My dad was being watched because he had been in the United States lived here 8 years as a young man. So they were watching him. My mom would say, Papa, don't say anything when you go to those meetings because they're watching you. And she wanted him to come back home. Otherwise, he would not. I did not know what happened to Jews till I came to this country. That's how quiet it was kept. Because my folks probably knew. They probably didn't know what happened to them, but we went to that little town of Brussels next to our little town to shop. And it was all Jews that would shop. Shops, they were very good business people. We shopped at those Jewish stores. My mom and dad did, and they would take us in the back room. We come by sleigh and horse. Our winters are much harsher than they are here. And they would take us as children, my brother and myself, in the back room and give us honey and hot milk, honey bread and hot milk to drink. And my dad came home one day from the town and he said, "You can't believe what I just saw." And I heard a little bit of it. He was trying to tell my mother, they did not want us children to know what was going on. And I heard, he says, the shop windows are broken out, the clothing is on the street, and the people are gone. As far as we know, they're gone. He says, I didn't see anybody. It was horrible. And that's what he saw. I did not know anything about that, but I didn't know then because I asked my mother when she came over here and I said, what did Papa tell you there about the store windows? And then she told me, so I didn't know. They wanted to keep us out of all this. And besides that, Hitler didn't want you to know anything. When the Russians came in, this might be off the subject. When the Russians were there about 2-3 days in our town, my brother was 13. There were several young, his friends, 12 and 11. They were standing 4 or 5 of them in a circle, just visiting right there. And one of the boys got shot. One of the Russians come up and shot this boy. And of course, my brother never, ever talked about this. He saw this, he's 13. Think about that. And his family always said, his boys, and he has one daughter, said, Dad would never talk about what happened. And I did not find out that this happened till we went back in Germany in the 70s. One of his classmates was there at our gathering. And he said, he told me the story. I did not know the story. My brother did not tell us what happened, but he was standing right there. Can you imagine standing there and one get shot? They thought he was a Hitler youth. He wasn't. It was his brother who was 16 years old. They shot the wrong boy. But why shoot a 16-year-old Hitler youth? It was like a Boy Scout, and only they have to wear the swastika on their armband. And they didn't, I mean, they were 16 years old, what could they do? But here they shot the wrong boy, they got a younger brother. And that's pretty sad, and I'm getting off of the subject.
So here, we've gone right into the subject of, so she makes it through Germany, through Hitler. The father kept saying they missed him again. That's all she heard him once in a while when they listened to the radio.
He listened to the radio, and when they had an attempt on Hitler's life, which was 3 or 4 times they tried to kill him.
So she remembers that.
I remember that from the radio, and my dad about crawled into the radio. They missed him again. They missed him again. In other words, he wanted to get rid of him.
And that's the most she knew, because the parents were so worried. They never talked to anybody. They just said, if we talk to anybody, it could get out, or the kids could say something. They were so terrified that their children might say something by mistake, as children are wont to do. So after a lot of those things were taken by the Germans, they had some things that they had put away. Some food and buried in the basement, buried in the farm. I don't know how your parents did that, but they did it very cleverly. So then the Russians come and tell us about how you were told that you had to leave, your parents and you had to leave, and where you were sent.
Oh, yes. When they came, they were there about 3 days or so. The Germans are holding the line. They won't get us to, we can't get into Berlin. So we are going to take you to, we're going to push you back. We're going to take you to Russia, Siberia, Poland, Russia, Siberia. And so they came in and they said, 2 hours, you have 2 hours. What would you take from your home in 2 hours? Here we had a farm. We had all these animals. We had, and what would you take? We took some clothes and food. 2 hours is all we had. And then they had us on the road, and they were on both sides with guns. And we had a horse-drawn wagon with 6 family belongings on that, so you know how little you took. And you go along, and it was winter, it was February, and it was cold. We had grandparents that died, living in a ditch. We did not have, my grandfather died while we were still on the farm. They lived in a ditch, and they were covered with a coat or blanket, and they would go, they couldn't even tell them goodbye. And then we saw babies. Babies, it was so cold that they couldn't make it, they died. And they just laid them in the ditch, covered them up and go. They never got buried. And we would move from town to town. And in a third town, we go from, our towns are real close together. You would have every mile, 2 miles, you have a town. Because everything we do is by horse and buggy, bicycles or walk. That's how we got around. Just, all of us had a bicycle. That's how we went from one town when we went to the town to another. So we just, and so when we had to leave, this town had to leave, Praga had to leave. We come to the next town, they all had to leave. Then we stayed there. You have 3 bedrooms, you get 3 families. You just were told, here, you take these people, they stay at your house. Can you imagine what those people thought? And we didn't want to go either, but what are you going to do when you're pushed to do something? So we were there maybe overnight, the next day, off again to the next town. That whole town, each town was moved. The line got longer and longer as towns were moved. And in a third town, they took my dad from us. They said he has to feed cattle. And my dad said to my mother, keep the family together. And it was just my brother and I. And thank the Lord, that's all there was, that we had no more, because it was hard even for the 3 of us. My dad never came back, and we don't know whatever happened to him. I composed myself. After all these years, okay, sorry. And then the Russians took me to work. My father was very clever about making me up. See, I was 15 years old. I turned 16, and I didn't know what day it was. When we moved from place to place, we didn't know if it was a Saturday or a Monday we knew it was nighttime and daylight. That's it. But we were moved when I turned 16, and Sherry says, Mildred, did you have a party? I said, party? I didn't even know what day it was. I didn't know when the 11th of March was. It was one day like another. And she was, in order to keep me safe, she put lard, she heated lard, and put it on my neck. And then she took a rag and put it real tight around. And then I had rosy cheeks, so she takes flour. So I looked so pale. and I could not turn my head. And they come in and look, and they say, she's sick. Thank the Lord. And then I didn't get drug out like some of the other girls did, but my mom had that foresight to do that for me. She did it every morning. Can you imagine that globby stuff on my neck? And I couldn't hardly turn my head, but it saved me. And one morning she hadn't got it done, and here they came. Wash, go wash. They took 10 ladies and 15 girls and took us on a wagon, took us to another town. There were no civilians in there to wash. I was 16 years old and I hadn't washed any big things on a wooden. I mean, we had metal washboards, like what you know, metal washboards. The Russians, where we washed for the soldiers, were wooden washboards. And I'm trying to find a corner. This might be sharp enough. That was so sharp. You run your hands on shirt, you wash shirts down that washboard. And pretty soon, after 3 days, there was no skin left on here. And they never knew our names. That's why I said, I don't think they know when my dad died where. They took no names. They just lined us up in a long line and they said, you, wash. And we had to step out of the line. And after the third day, I stepped out and it was a Russian soldier lady. I told her in German, look at my hands, they're all bloody. I have no skin left on me. I just told her in German, I can't wash anymore. I went like that and she shoved me back into the line. But we were told if you refuse to work, you get shot, so the rest of them don't refuse. And I figured I'd get shot. My dad was gone. I didn't know if I'm going to see my mother and brother again because they were in another town. And I didn't know how to even get home to them. So and so she pushed me back in line. She says, plant potatoes, the interpreter said. I was so happy I got to plant potatoes. I was raised from a little girl to go out and plant potatoes, but I didn't have to wash anymore. Our meal was potato soup and rancid bacon for breakfast, mashed potatoes and rancid bacon for lunch. That was real good. and potato soup and a piece of black bread for supper. I never liked potato soup, and my mother's potato soup was made with milk. And this was water. It was just, if you cook the potatoes and add a little extra water. That's what, but you were hungry, so you ate it. And then they told us, oh, we slept on bunk beds, nailed against the wall, boards nailed against the wall. So the girls, the ladies were here, and the girls took it up there. He said it was harder for the soldiers to get us from up there, we thought. And we had a guard in front of our house. There were no civilians in that house, but there was a guard in front of our house. Our way to keep clean was a trough with, in front of our house with a pump. And I was clean from here, this was clean, and this was clean. No change of clothes. No change of clothes. And so we were there for 3 weeks, and pretty soon it started itching. The straw was that long, about an inch or two long, when we slept on. No change of clothes. And so for 3 weeks, we were there, and we tried to take our blouses off and get the lice during the night, and our heads were itching, no combs to comb our hair.
How did you leave the laundry? What happened after you left the laundry?
When we left the laundry, they just said they had worn the people out. Their hands were like mine, and they were hurting. They needed a new crew. Go back, go home. We went back to the place where they got us, no civilians in here. Now, how am I going to find my mother and brother? Where are they? The town where they got us from, we went there, first house, no civilians in here. Now which way are we going to go? We didn't know, we just went to the next town, there was 4 of us, next town. We didn't know any of the names, we didn't care, we just did it for yourself. And we said, well, let's try going this way. Since our family aren't in a town where they got us from. And they were all strange, we didn't know anybody. I did not know a soul in that. And can you imagine being 16 and not knowing anybody and having to do this? And being away from your family, if you still had a family, that we didn't know. So we went to the next town, and luckily, I'm seeing this lady cooking on the outside, a short lady, that picture you saw, she was cooking over open fire. I said, that's my mother. And she said, she was this far from it. She said, Mildred, you're dirty and you got lice. How did she know this far away? And she, oh, I must have been. And anyway, she said, you stay right here. They had a little shed there, a little wood shed. And she says, you stay right here and I'm going to heat some water and get you cleaned up. So she got hot water, cleaned me up, burned my clothes. I took strict and burned my clothes right there in the fire because she knew they were full of lice. And then I stayed and got some clothes from, got cleaned up, got clothes from my brother. I didn't care, it was clothes. And I spent, and then from on my head, she put vinegar and tied a rag real tight around it. And I said, I can't stand it. They were running up there. I don't take it off. And she says, no, you got to keep it on. So, and I had to spend the night in that shed because there was 30 people sleeping in one room. It was a big room and they were just like this one. And she says, I can't have you come in because I don't want them to get lice when you're living like that. And so I had to stay out there until the next morning. And then my brother comes in and says, well, you are a sight. But he said, I said, well, thank you for sharing your clothes. Well, after that, they told us we could go back home again. And of course,
That's okay, that's fine, that's great.
we could go home and we thought, oh, good, we get to go back home. We get not even close to our farm. Half of the roof is gone. They had made a laundry out of our home in a hardwood floors. They drilled holes in the floors where they dumped the water. And they made a big hole under the window. And that's how you emptied your water. Instead of carrying it out, you just threw it on the floor. That's how we did in the laundromat. That's how we did there. And so when they saw that, what our place looked like, but in the basement, my dad had buried a bag of money. I had mother's ring, a necklace, my birth certificate, and their marriage certificate. They were married here in the United States. That was in the bag. And the basement had bricks, no, the regular bricks like you have here. The floor was made of bricks. And they lifted the bricks and put that bag under there, buried it. And when we got down in the basement, mother said, let's see if it's still there, but that buried. We got down there and there was the bricks all moved. All but one little corner, or maybe 10 bricks. And mother lifted the first brick And there it was.
Oh, wow.
Divine intervention, the Lord took care of me again. And this is how it went all along. I was protected every inch of the way. I just can't describe it. And when going through all this is why I don't talk like I used to never spend a whole hour talking. It brings back all these memories, so I don't do it anymore. I just answer questions.
I'm supposed to be asking her questions. When she shares her heart and her life in such a way that you understand that what she went through. So they go from their house. Now, when they went outside to the barn, and the family had put some food in the basin underneath the barn. They didn't have all that kind of stuff. But there was, everything was fine. There was nothing to do except for like a wooden leg of a chair. And the horse says, "Oh, I'll go get the leg of that chair." And they dug up the barn with that leg of the chair. They also used the leg of the chair to dig up the basement too. It just, can you think of how much destruction was in the house? If that was the only thing they could use, they must have obliterated their home, literally. I just wanted you to know that. I read the book, so they go from the house and told they have to leave. Mom said, and they said, "You must give us an hour." And they go to the neighbors in the town where they were living, because they would stay in the barn and try to plant some grow, some food, and then go to the town where it was safe. And then with the Russians that came through the poles, the poles came through, and they gave them an hour, and she said, "Oh no, you cannot do that. We'll make a decision. Will you give us till tomorrow?" So the whole town decides to leave and go together. And that's where, and tell us about Mildred and your mother and the mayor.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes, we were, my mom said when we were in the displaced person camp in Berlin, they said, send us anywhere but to the Russian zone. Can we go to the French zone, American zone, British zone? We again ended up in the Russian zone. And we, of course, we had to walk there, and there was 3 other families besides us. There was the kitchen and 4 rooms. So there was 4 families and a kitchen. We shared a kitchen there. And I'm going to tell you a popcorn story. I sent food over there. I was going to high school, and I sent food over there. And I sent Jello, and I told them how to prepare it, and I sent popcorn. They'd never seen popcorn before. So I sent popcorn, and I told them how to do it. I said, you take a skillet, put some grease, lard, anything you got in it, shake it. And I come home from high school, and I said to the lady I lived with, I said, this was 4 weeks afterwards, and it takes 6 weeks to get a letter over there. And no phones at that time. I said, Esther, I think I forgot to tell Moody to put a lid on. And so she said, and in the meantime, she writes me, she says, you didn't tell me, but I grabbed the lid and I put it on, but in the meantime, it was flying all over. Other families came running because my mom would go, woo! And then all of us start popping before she got the lid put on. And they said the Americans are trying to blow us up.
So her mom is a very good friend. The mayor likes her mom, who is, a woman with children. And she says to her mom, she says, they are coming to take the daughters, or some of the ladies. So I have talked them out of taking your daughter, but next year they will.
She was ill, your mother was kind of ill. That's why I said, I won't send her.
I won't send her. So the mother says to him later on, she says, would you let Mildred go to Berlin and get our winter clothes?
Which we didn't have.
So the mayor gives her permission to go to Berlin.
Gets a ticket. I had to have a permission to get on the train to go from the Russian zone to Berlin. I had to have a permission to get a ticket, and that's what they gave.
Right. And then her aunt and her cousin was working at the embassy and wanted Mildred, they choose to stay and wanted Mildred to help. And so she brought her ID. And tell us about when you brought your ID, your birth certificate. What happened?
When I went with my cousin to the American Council, he said, my dear girl, you are an American. I said, no, I was born in America, but I got German father and a German mother. He says, well, here's your birth certificate. You were born in America. And I didn't know I was an American. And I'm so glad I thank God I was, because I was the only one that got to come. My mother and brother stayed there, had to stay.
So then she was put in a displaced, she was able to help. She was put in a displaced camp for several years. And then about a year, and then you went to New York. What was it like when you arrived in New York?
Someone said to me, because one of the questions was, well, what did you think of the Statue of Liberty? At age 16 or 17 by that time, I was a year in. All I could think of, I got off the ship, how am I going to get to Great Bend to my aunt and uncle? I couldn't speak English. I knew nobody. How do I get to Great Bend? The Statue of Liberty that didn't mean at that time anything. Now it does, but not then. Nothing. I mean, that was one of the questions. But I got to Great Bend, and my aunt and uncle both spoke German. And my cousin, we couldn't talk because she was a junior in high school and I was 17 at that time. Or I was going to be 18. I got there when I was 17. And I started the high school when I was 18. I went to Lorraine, to a small town, to go to school. And I graduated when I was 22. And I got to go vote when I was 21, and I was still in high school. And I voted ever since.
So if you were looking at Germany and did the same with Russia and Poland and all of the things going on in the world today, what advice would you give us?
What advice would I give you? I says, go vote. Pay attention to history. I want our young people to know. Just pay attention. Because I don't know, you know what, living where we live and seeing what I have seen, I hope that we aren't going that way a little bit. I don't know what you think, but I have a feeling that we are just a little bit getting like we were over there, and I hope that doesn't happen. And they tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. I hope that doesn't happen here.
Thank you. And I'm going to give her a little few more card, maybe just as a thank you. Thank you so much for listening. You can come up and talk to them if you like, and ask questions, but we weren't taking questions from the audience. It just makes it easier on us, so she doesn't, you know, that's why.
Since you read the book.
Since I read the book and some of my books, I read it, we had some of the questions. It was just because it's hard when people ask questions and it hits her in the wrong way. Even though she did some really amazing sharing.